Tracy.
Hey, Rosalie.
Rosie, you're so far away.
Hey, Rosalie. I can look far away.
I know, we're far away.
No, you have to be 6 feet apart.
Well, I think this meets the 6 feet plus some.
Like 12.
Yeah. I think so.
Hey, only,
Gotta follow those regulations.
You better.
hey, Stace, I'm
You
five,
saw my sarcasm in my
I'm
voice?
5'2".
Yeah.
I think so.
You ready, Vince?
Yes.
Okay, call to
Public
order.
Works.
Public Works first.
Public Works will now be in session. All 5 members are present. We will start out with a joint referral, item number 10 on tonight's agenda. It's a communication from the Director of Public Works to extend the temporary appointment of Brett Wollenzine in the position of Fleet Service Superintendent, and Dave Webking, Public Works Director, is here if he wants to share anything with us.
So currently, the fleet superintendent in the interim status, this person is being evaluated, so it's just a temporary time frame, just to review and evaluate.
Okay. This is a communication, so we do what? Are we voting like
Approve and place
up or
on
down
file.
on this?
Place on file.
To approve and place on
Place
file.
on
Okay.
file.
Is there a motion to approve and place on file by anyone?
Sure
So
move,
moved.
Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, we got a whole bunch. Whoever there, Okay, it's been moved and seconded in favor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Then we go to, that was the joint referral. Now we go to item 26 on tonight's agenda. It's a resolution authorizing the city engineer to amend an existing contract with, I believe it's Spone Ranch, Inc., to make improvements at the West Allis Skate Park for an amount not to exceed $76,000. And I see Chief Engineer Pete Daniels here, so go ahead, Pete.
Okay, we've had some erosion, and we've had some vandalism at the skate park. I know you probably can't see this, but this area over here, there was a wall that the kids kind of ripped down because it was in their way. So we're gonna, the Spone Ranch is experts on this, so they came up with some good solutions here. So we're gonna actually put in like a half pipe thing rather than a wall, and we're gonna pave a lot of the top of these pipes where there's a lot of erosion over the years. It's all the grass that they did try to plant a bunch of grass during COVID, and it all died because the kids are all running all over it. So we figured if we put some concrete in there, it'll last longer. This area too, in the middle, the volcano, it's all eroded. And when we showed the kids, kind of had a focus group out there, that we could put in, I forget what this thing's called, but this feature here, they can do all sorts of tricks on it, and they can skateboard in the middle. So we would be solving a lot of our erosion problems that forestry is having to deal with, and we would fix the problem, that the wall that they tore down. And the money's all donated from the Windover Foundation, which is, I think, the Quadracci family. So it's all private donations. So, any questions? No tax dollars.
Mr. Chair, I did have a question because I know that there was a focus group. That area in the center that you're talking about, is that the gear section? Was it voted to be removed or not?
No, actually, a lot of the kids said they liked the gear.
Yeah.
It's the one unique thing, and that's what the Spone Ranch guys, they're from California. They said, nationwide, we are the only skate park that has a feature like that.
Right.
So it's very unique. And the kids say that they do jump over the gears and they
Right.
do like them. So I don't think that's going to be a part of this. From what I was hearing, they like it the way it is. So
Okay.
that's not a part of this proposal.
Well, I just want to note that I think these improvements are going to be well received. And I do know that it cost a little money going in, trying to do the landscaping and whatnot. Just doesn't serve practicality
Right.
to the park itself. So I'm in full support of this. So
Okay.
thank you.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Then we have item 27, take your mask down, Road. Resolution amending the existing professional service contract with ACOM Technical Services, Inc., also known as ATS, to provide consulting services relative to Wisconsin Administrative Code NR 216 stormwater permit compliance requirements for 2020 for an additional sum not to exceed $14,400. Pete Daniels.
Okay, this is required by the DNR. We have to get a permit from the DNR for our stormwater to make sure that we're keeping the waters clean. This is the illicit discharge report that we put together every year. We send it to the DNR. I mean, one of the areas that you and I have talked about is Ignago. There have been some issues there. They've never actually captured the contaminants, but there have been a lot of rumors. So we would be sampling there, as other places. All the creeks and rivers in the city, we would be taking samples to see if we can track down some of the plumbing that is probably misdirected, I guess. So we did find at the car wash on Highway 100 last year that his all his sudsy water was actually going into the river. So that's not a good thing. So he actually hired a plumber, and the pipes had been, many years ago, had been cross-connected. So he unconnected them, and no more sudsy water is going to Hale Creek. So that type of thing where somebody has some incorrect plumbing that's putting pollution into the rivers, the DNR wants us to search those out and fix them and clean up our waters as part of the permit that they issue us. So
Is that how we got that guy on, over by the We Energies, that chemical company? How did we get tipped off on that?
I don't remember. Probably this. I don't. That's maybe before my time, but I don't remember that
Okay.
one.
All right, any,
Move to approve.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I don't believe there was going to be a no. Okay, item 28, resolution accepting work of Pablo Paving Corporation for the construction of an asphalt parking lot permeable interlocking concrete pavement system, concrete curb and gutter, storm sewer, pavement marking, landscaping, and utility adjustments in the West Allis Public Library parking lot located at 7421 West National Avenue.
So moved.
I could have
Second.
read all night.
I know, I just figured I'd give you a break.
Keep going.
It's been moved, I said I could have written all night. It's been moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now we move to item 29, resolution accepting work of Northway Fence Incorporated for the installation of fence, gates, gravel, and a bridge at the West Allis Dog Park located south of the West Allis Police Station.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I would like to ask a question, because this has come up a couple times that I've been approached with the cost as far as taxpayers' cost on the dog park, and a lot of the answers that I had received is this was funded by a group to make happen. So is this something that the taxpayers are picking up, or is this also based on donation?
My recollection's a little foggy. Part of it was donations because they had the gala and they did raise some private donations. I believe there was also some,
Wasn't there a grant?
yeah,
This
I
would
would
be
have
for-
to,
Grant
I'll have to
funding.
get back
This
to
was
you.
before
Oh,
I
was
came
there
on
block grant?
The council.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there were some donations there, but there was some city money, but not tax dollars. I think it was a grant.
Okay, I'm all about supporting the puppies. I just wanted to make
yeah,
sure
I'll have to
I had
double
the
check.
answers if
I can double
constituents are
check on
asking
that.
me.
Okay.
That's it.
Did we approve it yet?
Not yet.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 30, resolution accepting work of Northern Pipe, Inc. for the closed-circuit TV inspection of sanitary and storm sewer at various locations in the city of West Allis, and authorizing and directing settlement of said contract in accordance with contract terms of the 2019 project number 8.
Move to approve?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Now, 31, resolution accepting work of D&H Demolition LLC for the demolition of the former flower shop, which includes, but it not limited to, mobilization, demobilization, asbestos abatement, and hazardous material removal, building demolition and backfilling, and topsoil seeding at the former flower shop located at 9201.
moved.
That was a move?
That was a move.
Okay, motion, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have questions. This particular location, if you can provide me with clarity, is that corner flower shop on 92nd and Greenfield. Is the property just south of it, that house right beside it, is that part of that property?
No, but it used to have the same owner. The man who owned the flower shop lived in that house. When he died, they split it up. So yes, he had a garage on the house property that faced the flower shop property, which they don't have access to now, but.
Right, and that was why I asked, because
yeah.
it's like building an airplane in a basement and expecting to fly
He
out.
owned both properties for many years and never combined them, because and then when he died, they sold them separately. There is another garage door to that garage, but,
So there is no worry of us having any issues with easement for that property or them having access to the garage? 'Cause
There was
it's
no
of
easement,
use.
so, yeah, whoever buys the vacant lot now will not have to worry about that unless he concedes. I mean, an easement, usually purchase an easement, so that someone would have to pay some money to cut across his property, so. But there
Okay.
was no easement in place, it was just the same owner, so there was no need. But, yeah.
Okay.
The garage door now faces,
Mr. Chair.
can't access it.
Alderman Radke.
Pete, what is the city's plan for that particular parcel?
I don't know if I have an answer. I think there's a realtor who's trying to sell it privately, so I don't know if Mr. Steele has plans for it. I know he was looking at a larger project for that whole area, but I'm not aware of any recent development. So there is a realtor who's trying to sell it privately.
Oh,
Maybe it'll develop by itself, but I don't know anything beyond that.
If I may,
Mhm.
early on, the guy who did the apartments on roughly the 1800 block of 92nd, right across from where Knights of Columbus used to be, he looked at it early on and walked.
It's not, in my opinion, something that's going to be easily developed. So I wasn't sure, I was confused at one point. I thought that's where we were talking about building that house. But I think that's west of
No,
that
Right.
location, if I'm correct.
right.
Okay. All right, I have no more questions, so
Great. Item 32.
I don't think we had a
No,
a
didn't
vote on
it.
it.
We didn't
Vote,
vote.
right.
What's wrong with you guys? I didn't ask for the vote. I think it's
Sorry.
been moved and seconded, right? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Communication from the city engineer regarding West Beloit Road from West Lincoln Avenue to South 60th Street alternative
Move
intersection.
to approve.
Move to
Aye.
place on
Place
file.
on
I'll
file.
place on file.
Place on file.
Okay,
Sorry.
there's a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Yes, Rote does. Do you want to tell us about this? This is right by the alibi.
Yep, right
I
by
know
the
you brought
alibi and
props
that
and
little,
maps.
I don't know, you probably can't see this, but, here, the roads go north-south. So the alibi is right here, that little triangle piece of land is right here. It's a goofy intersection.
Wraps around this.
So we would take out this part of Grant Street, so that if you're coming, yeah, and a lot of people complain about traffic cutting through on Livingston, so you wouldn't have that flow if you're trying to go to Longfellow School or trying to get to 60th Street, we'd be cutting that off. So I think we would cut down a lot of the cut-through traffic. You'd have to make a right turn to get out onto Beloit. It would give some more green space here if the alibi wanted to have outdoor dining or whatever, and then we would be able to enlarge the size of this park make that green space as well, and also make this a safer intersection, because there were 11 accidents here over a 4-year period, because it's confusing. So we did survey the neighbors. They all agreed that we should take out this part of Grant Street. So we sent out about 700 letters, and we only had about 60 people that participated in the survey, but they all pretty much agreed that taking Grant Street out would be helpful. So this will be built, the light will be built in the year 2023. It's 80% funded by federal, WSDOT and federal government. So we wanted to clean up this little hornet's nest when we do that. So that's the plan we'd like to propose.
And the Christmas tree lot stays the same, correct?
Yeah, in
Okay.
this scenario, we would
Doesn't
not
involve that
touch,
at
we
all.
would not touch that, yeah.
It took 30 years, but finally we're doing it. It took over 30 years to do that, Over 30 years.
Well, and
But
you
finally
probably,
we
you
achieved
probably
that.
remember the gas station that was there, right?
Of course, used to fill up there all the time, Pete. No.
Okay.
Okay, it's been, communication has been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries, and that is all.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, License and Health Committee comes in order. All the members are present. So we have new matters for introductions. So we have item 46, 2020-2021 Class A beer license, a Class A liquor cider only license application, or Welcome White Pine and LLC, Erjack Walia, agent DB-/B/A, Welcome Mart BP, for the premise located on 79 West National Avenue, new non-existing location. So we need,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to address this right out of the gates. Being that this is a gas station, I believe our last common council meeting, or even prior to that, we had Speedway approach us with
Yes.
8 different locations requesting a liquor license. I wouldn't in good conscience vote yes for an additional liquor license for the same premise of being a gas station. So that would be my point that I'd like to raise, that if we denied Speedway this liquor license, I don't see why we would approve an additional gas
I
station.
agree with you. So any other question from the members?
I make a motion for denial.
Second.
All in favors of denial?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The aye have it. So we take no actions on item 47 tonight. But we move on item 48, expedite temporary extension, a list of application available online. So to me, that's something to place on file, I believe.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
for item 48, this is the idea of the temporary extensions of outdoor
Yes.
premises for the COVID situation. So if you wish to make a motion to approve those licenses until the next subsequent meeting on September 15th, that would be a motion that's in order. If there's any interest in any particular licensees that you do not want to approve for an extension, you can remove those licensees from that list tonight, and they will not get their extension after tonight. This is the one where it's only a 2-week approval every single time. So
Any
Mr.
questions from the
Chair?
members?
Do we have to do it every 2 weeks, or can we do it every month?
the way the law was written, it only approves to the next regular council meeting, and so the committee would have to approve now to validate all those licenses for 2 more weeks.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve those licenses for 2 more weeks.
Second.
All in favors of the motion?
Discussion?
Yes.
Discussion. I looked through all the extension applications, and this one had DA bar, 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Actually, in the directions, it mentioned they couldn't be beyond 10 o'clock. So I'm not going to approve something that
That was- that
Alderwoman
was-
Ranky?
Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, we addressed that at our last council meeting, that regardless of how he filled that out, as it's written, and Kale, you can
Okay.
clarify that, as
I
it's written regardless, they
apologize.
have to
I didn't
abide
realize
within
that.
that window. But yeah, you caught it, we caught it last time as well.
And then also, a lot of the applications are for every day. And yet, they probably have entertainment only, say, for 2 or 3 days. So why are they filling it out for every day?
So the ordinance, as it was written, allows the licensees to be open 7 days a week. The time of closure is just a little bit later for Friday and Saturday nights.
Right.
But other than that, they have to comply with the ordinance as it is. So they may choose to only operate 1 or 2 days a week, but this extension does grant them the ability to operate 7 days a week if they choose.
Have we had any issues with any bars? I've only received one complaint on one and one complaint on another.
So that is sort of the exchange for the businesses that chose to go this route. The exchange would be that they didn't have to do a lot to get the approval, but because it's only approved it for 2 weeks, there's no need to do a hearing to revoke or non-renew if they do something. So the only business I heard where there were some issues was Natty Oaks had some complaints about noise a few weeks ago, but it was anecdotal. I don't know to the extent by which it was an issue. So I would honestly rely upon your constituents more than myself as far as if there are any issues with any of the exterior licensed areas.
I heard about that complaint, however, I monitored it a couple times, and I didn't see that it was a problem.
Yeah, so like I said, if you come across any constituents or you yourself observe anything that you want to remove one of the licensees from that list, you just simply have to move to remove them at this time before approval.
I see, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Kale, I did hear about the Natty Oaks thing as well, but I've been there a number of times, and he has nothing to worry about because the volume level, he's not even having full bands. He's having 2 and 3 people acoustic set type of thing, so it's not even an issue. I've been there for a number of them, and it's very, very low compared to what I've seen at other places.
so we have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The aye have it. So now we move on with previous matter for considerations. Item 49, an ordinance to ban conversion of therapy involving children. So any members would like to discuss or?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm not sure if we were supposed to have a presentation from our Health Commissioner, Bob. I don't see that he's,
Yeah,
I
I
do
think
see
he-
that you're here.
he
I'm
will.
sorry. You were hiding off in the corner. So if you could join us, I'd appreciate that. And I believe that Board of Health met, last week? So if you can offer some insight to some of the questions I believe our committee had,
Sure.
give us
Yeah,
an overview.
So in your packet, you should have a communication that is essentially sponsored and supported by the Board of Health. Really, what it entails is, in relation to the ban itself, really just a quick, I would say, literature search on the available research and evidence to support conversion therapy in general. And so what you have in front of you is essentially a summary statement of a particular report that was prepared by an expert panel that was part of the SAMHSA federal organization, which is a branch of the National Institutes of Health. And so within that, you're actually seeing some bullet points that really speak to the ineffectiveness of the treatment and the practice itself. They're also seeing, generally speaking, that you're trying to change a behavior that is otherwise normal. And then I think too, the third bullet really kind of speaks to the importance of the fact that there, number one, is really no evidence to support its benefit, that in fact, based on the expert panel review, that this is likely to do and can create more harm than benefit to that individual. So that's a summary with regard to the research that is essentially summarized in that particular report. I then went on to essentially capture two, just again, a breakdown of the number of states and or just general locations in the U.S. that currently have conversion bans in place. And per my tally, again, this is, you got to trust old Wikipedia, right? They were showing 20 states that or actually have conversion bans in place. And actually, I reported 9, but actually at our Board of Health meeting, one of the guest members did point out that the city of Appleton also was working on a ban, which I did verify. So unfortunately, it says 9 in that report, but per the most recent tally as of that report, it appears there are 10 municipalities, including the city of Appleton, that most recently passed a conversion ban.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, if for any chance you don't have the percentage that I asked that questions before in regard to the, how many cases we have in West Allis?
Yeah, I did do a lit search to see what was available, and I can't pull any specific concrete numbers up.
Okay. You know, the fact
it's-
is
if I
that
could just
I'm not really, I know it's a major concern, you know, I'm not totally, you know, the fact is that, to me, I would be more comfortable if it was something in time, you know, to working with the state legislators to bring something forward to be more statewide. You know, I mentioned before, I'm not in favor of this conversion therapy. I'm not. That's something that the willingness of a person, you know, the families, you know, to me, if the parents want to do that, to me, that's wrong. But because I know many people, they are great people, you know. I mean, I have families in Waukesha. They have their kid is married, you know. So, I mean, such a nice family, nice two young boys. So, but the only problem that I have, you know, I could be wrong, but when you have a policy locally, and I understand there's other community within the state, they already passed, so they're working on it, to approve this ordinance or, you know, about this conversion therapy. But then when somebody can go from here, can go to Milwaukee, a family, so we're not really, you know, we passing it, you know, for the satisfaction that we have it on the books, you know, that was tell us, prove that condemning the conversion therapy. But the only thing I can see is some families can go per se to Milwaukee or West Milwaukee, can go to Wauwatosa, you know, can go any place else. What we really have done here, you know, to me, I mean, I'm not happy about it. If a therapist, you know, does something like that, to me, it's not normal. To me, a person, the way you're born, that's how you will be, you know. I mean, I'm not a tall guy, I'm a short guy, you know, but that's what life is, you know.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yes,
may,
go ahead.
and I don't know if that was a specific question that you had or more of a statement that you were making as far as,
Well, I make the statement as far as that I cannot really support that, because if I was more of a statewide resolution, you know, from the state legislators, I mean, like I say, I'm not opposing it. The fact, I mean, I'm against that, but I cannot support something that doesn't have no validity really within our community, within the state,
well,
just
and,
locally. you
and
know,
if I
that's-
may, Bob, just because we may not have the numbers doesn't mean that that's not taking place. And this is where I started out with thinking, if I may, that a resolution was good enough. We are basically making a stand as a community saying, no, we don't support this. We think it's bad. It needs to go away. I had issue with an ordinance because I didn't think the framework really made sense in how it was written. I'm going to give some of my talking points that I have prepared here. And I just want to let everyone know, prior to me taking my seat, I noticed that West Allis was very forward-thinking and progressive in a couple different areas. One was, even though it might have not been a local issue, we did take it to state level to get measures put forth, such as closing loopholes. And sometimes it's taking that risk, that chance as a local municipality, and you're right. You can probably go to maybe New Berlin because they've yet to pass a conversion therapy ban, but you can't go to Milwaukee, and you can't go to Shorewood, and you can't go to Racine. And you're seeing these municipalities all kind of come together, and then we're going to get that to the state, and then the change is going to be made. So you might think you're throwing this up in the air and it's just falling to the ground. It's not. You're making a firm stand in what we believe that should not be taking place. And I can give the parallel. There's laws that protect children and child abuse. There's nothing written within child abuse. That includes conversion therapy. We can all agree that this could be categorized as abuse. However, we don't have any laws to protect. And we've had 3 months now in discussion, and I can say, like I said, I wasn't on board in the beginning because it didn't make sense. But I'm going to give you some points that might make sense. So I believe it's within reason, specific to endangering the welfare of a child, whether physically and or mentally, that we do make a stand against such practices of conversion therapy in our city. We have laws against child abuse, as I just mentioned, as well as domestic violence. Yet the state is failing to protect the LGBT community when it comes to conversion therapy. It prompts me to act in support of the ordinance, even though at first I did not think that I was going to be supportive. In my research, I've also found questionable concerns relative to conversion therapy taking place in religious settings. I know this is an uncomfortable topic for most people. How separation in of church and state may impact not only the enforcement of such a ban, but our legal right to do so. That was my one point. Okay, a lot of this research led to, okay, this is religious-based. So that prompted me to give Cale Decker, our city attorney, a call and say, what can we do with this? Is this just something that's going to feel good to put on paper and then we move along? If I'm going to vote yes to something with good conscience, I want to know it's making a difference in our community. And I want that voice, at least a resource, to be there. So in a moment, as soon as I finish being long-winded, I'm going to offer Cale that opportunity to enlighten the the committee on that. So I'm going to note that adopting this ordinance does not infringe on the right of a parent to seek counseling. There's a clear difference. And that was one thing that Alderwoman Keene and I, when we were working together, is letting, I'm a parent. If my child has an issue that needs to be dealt with, I should have a right as a parent to seek counseling. Conversion therapy does not fit, even though that word therapy sounds real good to a lot of people. Therapy can be harmful too, and in this case, conversion therapy is harmful. It's not the therapy such as counseling to say, hey, we need some family guidance. In closing, I'm going to propose the following amendments to the framework of the original ordinance that Alderman Tenario put forth. And offer some additional language to the conversion therapy ban, which I'm going to show my support and also add my name to the co-sponsorship of this. I thank everybody who has worked with me to enlighten me as to the effect of it, and whether it passes or not, I learned a lot. So thank you. The first thing that I'm proposing as an amendment is changing the forfeiture amount from a sliding scale of $500 to $1,000 to $5,000. I know that when Alderwoman Ranke saw the $5,000, she said $5,000, and that seems to be harsh, and it needs to be harsh. We need to send a strong message. Cale can also explain how that works as far as forfeitures and who's responsible for enforcement. The second is those licensed practicing conversion therapy in a medical setting for fee will receive this fine, and in such cases, I believe that we should work with our health department to give them authority and authorization to refer these cases to the state, which then in turn the licensing board, regardless of what their practice is, can also take a look at it. But it's not an and or, it's an and is. So in closing, that's really all I have to say. And Cale, if you could offer some enlightenment as far as that specific point of how you can defend this.
Sure.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Grisham, the original question talked about the potential issue of church and state. There are several cases that have already been litigated, even though this is a relatively new topic of litigation. Several cases around the country who have litigated that point, and in every single instance, the conversion to therapy bans that were enacted by their states were upheld. There does not seem to be a constitutional issue with the way that the city has approached this issue. Also, as far as its the interplay between local and state, although there are state laws that prohibit causing emotional harm to a child, there's no direct law that would address this. The law, the way it's written, doesn't require anyone to show harm was caused. The practice itself is what is banned. So if you want to try to enforce the state law on this, it's going to be much more difficult, as it is on the books, to apply it to this particular situation. The ban, as it's currently written, though, eliminates the difficult part of that proof problem on the state level and just bans the practice in and of itself. And then on top of that, just to double check, I want to make sure the committee has the exact language that what the amendment was. So I'm just going to read that quick just to make sure that everyone's aware of what it says. The forfeiture from $500 to $1,000 is amended to simply say $5,000. And then this language is added to paragraph 4 of the proposal. There is no paragraph 4 right now, but I don't know if you shared that with everybody. Okay.
I did.
Okay,
Actually,
okay.
Yes, I did.
Then,
The
I
whole
mean, if
council has it.
everyone has paragraph 4 in front of them, that's fine. Otherwise, I can read it out if anyone wants me to.
Yes,
One
please.
that's the one that says enforcement?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I got that.
Okay, it just basically says, in summary, that the health department, in addition to a police officer, can issue a citation. And if anyone who does issue a citation for this violation, that person also is then required to report to the state licensing authority if the person who is the subject or the defendant of that citation happens to be a licensed professional, whether it be a therapist, psychologist, physician, things like that. Then in that case, the citation and its circumstances are reported to that person's licensing board or agency. So with those amendments, that is what is on the floor at this time. It's been moved by Alderman Grisham. It would need a second.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Alderman.
So I've been looking into this a lot, and I don't believe the issue is a local issue because, correct me if I'm wrong, Cale, but can you try this case in municipal court if somebody does this?
If this law is enacted, it would be triable in municipal court as it is currently written for the $5,000. The issue is that some would say that the level of severity of this type of charge is one that normally we would not adopt. Like municipal court would not adopt a homicide. Municipal court would not adopt sexual assault of a child because they are serious offenses that should be charged by a district attorney. So I think what your question is getting at is this a charge that is appropriate for municipal court given its severity, if I understand your question?
Well, yeah, because to me, and I'm going to go back to what David Case stated in his talk earlier in citizen participation. He stated that this is abuse against children. There are state laws against child abuse. There are state laws that protect children from child abuse. This, to me, is a form of child abuse. And if we're going to put a penalty on it, I'm sorry, I think $5,000 is nothing. It should be $1 million at minimum. So, to me, this is not somewhere at a local level that we should be handling this because we can't prosecute it. And what happens to the licensee who's doing this if we find out that there is somebody around here? Do they lose their license from us in the municipality?
No, it would, the types of professionals we're talking about would be state licensed folks, so it would be state action that would be required to take action against their license.
And we're back to a state issue again.
Yes, and as far as the $1 million forfeiture goes, there is going to be a limit on the type of forfeiture a municipal court can impose. So I have yet to see a judgment of $1 million anywhere in the country in a municipal level, but I guess theoretically it could be out there. I've never tested that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Abuse on child is unacceptable to me under any circumstance. And there's not even a fine out there, and jail time, to me, that is sufficient enough.
Well, and just to clarify, there's child abuse as a concept and child abuse as a criminal law. So just the hard part about it is making sure that from a legal standpoint, there's a law prohibiting it. I can say right now, there's no state law prohibiting this exact practice. There are other child abuse laws that could potentially be worked into this factual situation, but that's why I was saying the elements are different. One, you need to prove harm. In the local ordinance, you would not need to prove harm. It would just be the act itself would be illegal. So it's getting very technical, but I'm happy to answer any clarifying questions anyone might have on that.
And we have no confirmed cases of this happening here in West Allis.
I have received none, but I also don't know if I ever would. I don't know how that would be reported.
No, I have not received any calls or any kind of indication.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
But again, I think it's, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for interrupting. You finish
Suzanne's
up.
point, I mean, just because, we don't get the calls doesn't mean that it's not happening, right?
Correct, and that's kind of where I was going to go with it, Alderman Stefanski. I appreciate your passion in saying, well, I would like $1 million too to be a fine, but is that realistic? And as I was offered direction from our city attorney, we had to put a forfeiture on that. Would I think even $5,000 could come close to it? No, but not doing anything is even worse, in my opinion. So that's why I proposed the changes. And I'll give one final example. When and prior to there ever being child abuse laws and or prior to domestic violence, people suffered in silence. And if there is a percentage, I don't care if it's 1, I don't care if it's 1,000 in our community that doesn't have the opportunity to come forward and say, hey, you know what? I have a voice now. I can say this is happening because you know what? I know something is going to be done about it. So maybe we will see it, maybe we won't. But one thing for sure, my vote's going to be yes to make sure we don't see it happening here. And that's my final statement.
Child abuse is against the law. There are places for protection for children, and there are places for them to speak up. This, to me, is in my mind, child abuse. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's child abuse. And $5,000 for some person who's doing it, slap on the hand. It's meaningless. That's why I think we're trying to attack something that's above us. And I think the resolution that we did shows that we take a stand on it and take a stand against it and support the community.
And if I may, it also means that we're doing nothing about it but saying we denounce it. So if it's one step closer to even making sure, just like I said, as a progressive city, we did go to the state on, the dark stores. So maybe we can be a small part of that larger movement that needs to take place. And I do believe that should happen on a local level. So, again, that's my final statement.
Yeah, I have a question for Kel. Kel, per se, a family, they like to take their child to an expert, a medical therapist, which has got a lot of experience. To me, that's wrong. I don't think anybody can conversion therapy. You're going to change anybody. But the fact is, what really would happen to the say the physician is practicing in West Allis? So what would be his consequences if we charge him, take him to court? What would be the, he'll be able to lose his license or?
The only penalty
It's a
this,
state statute. He hold a state license, he's not locally abide license, it's not a tavern, so we control that. But if it's a physician that he is getting a state license, what recourses really we have on that? It's a local ordinance say that we pass, but still, how can you incriminate or take the surgeon or the therapist to court, how can it be handled that, really?
the only penalty the city can impose is a forfeiture.
Yeah, that's what but in overall, that's nothing, really.
They could still continue to practice their,
Still, they can keep practicing in West Allis.
In your case, the physician state licensing board would have to take action against their license. for their license to be impacted. The city would not be able to do that.
But there is no really, I mean, there is laws for other child abuse, but there's no laws in the state statute in regard to this. Is that correct?
Correct.
So how can we, really say that we're going to, say, fine them $5,000, but still be able to still functioning within this community? So what are we gaining, really? So once you go to the state, still the state, I mean, the man can still operate in West Allis, really be able to, because it's a more of a, it's issued by the state.
Mr. Chair, if I may, now you would know this too as a practicing barber.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
But as a practicing barber hairstylist,
Yes.
I'm licensed by the state, you were licensed by the state. So even though this municipality has no leverage or say over my licensure, and you don't grant it, that doesn't mean that I can harm somebody in the city. I can't go cutting people up while I'm giving haircuts and have a dirty establishment and not follow what the guidance of my profession states under the state law or the state governing agency. And if so, it happens that somebody makes a complaint about me and takes it to state level, you bet your butt they're going to be taking my license from me and or sanctioning. The whole purpose of adding that language to this was to have a double consequence. So not only are you facing the fine that you're going to have here, you're also going to put your license on the line. So is it worth doing? Are you going to come here and actually do it? And that's really the point. So it's not we can't do anything about it, it's we're trying to do something about it. And yes, the state can, so if they choose, as Cale had expressed to me, they can sanction, they can take a look at that licensure. And no, that's not within our hands, but it can be referred out to that.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Cale, do you know if somebody gets, for any license that's state licensed, do you know how long the process is to make them, have them remove it?
I don't know the exact process. I'm sure there's no hard timeline on it. It would be an action by the licensing agency or board. They'd have to bring, I'm sure, specific charges under whatever standards they have for licensure.
So if somebody is doing this, and we find out about it, and they get a fine from us, they could continue going and doing it the next day if they pay their fine, and they could still do it even if they don't pay their fine, because they can't get their license taken away until the state does something about it, correct?
Chronologically, yes, you're correct on that.
Okay.
Any further discussions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm very disappointed in our state legislatures that they're failing to act on this or take a stand. The LBJ community has started from grassroots, from what I understand, and they're seeking support at individual cities to make a stand, and I appreciate that. I basically was looking for stats. I thought I didn't know it was happening in West Allis, or if it is happening in West Allis, that we want to take a stand on it. However, our health commissioner has indicated there aren't stats available from what he has indicated, and because all this is happening underground. Hush, hush, nobody knows about it other than the people that are participating in this kind of ritual, you might say. The Board of Health has shown support for doing something for our community. And I thank Bob for his efforts in putting together what he has, a statement on behalf of the Board of Health. We had a nice discussion, and people were very supportive of this particular ordinance. I'm I'm a little concerned about the $5,000, though. That, to me, is a stretch, even though you said it's worth $1 million. I'm wondering if we possibly could change that, if, with the committee's permission, if we would change it to another lesser amount, or maybe ask Alderman Grisham why she chose the $5,000 amount.
If I may answer, I looked at the $5,000 as, I thought that the 500 to 1,000 was just it made no sense. The language made no sense to me. And for the severity, yeah, I thought in discussion with Alderman Tenario, let's put that number up. In further discussing it with Cale, he explained how that process works. I would be comfortable with bringing that forfeiture down if that's something that, you're not comfortable with. I mean, I think the bigger goal is to get this passed and show the LGBT community that they do have our support. So I'm totally up to, if you'd like to further amend it, feel free to make that motion.
I would,
Okay.
I would.
And I don't know if there's a discussion on board as to what the amount would be. If you want to go half of that, you want to go back down to 1,000. I just thought it didn't make sense in the language with a sliding scale. So I thought a firm number made sense. So it's like, how can you say, okay, well, you sort of just did a little conversion therapy, so we're just going to charge you 500. You know what I mean? That's why it didn't make sense to me. So I hope that provides you clarity.
More or less to deter it from happening?
Yeah, more of a deterrent. Exactly. I
Yeah.
thought if the number was higher, you'd be thinking twice if you're going to set up shop.
Yeah,
Okay.
Gail's got a
Cale, could I have your?
Sure, I can explain the forfeiture situation. So basically, the legislative body authorizes the judicial branch to impose a forfeiture. And so no matter what number you pick, you're picking the maximum. A judicial, like a judge, can always impose either the maximum or can impose anywhere in between or all the way down to 0. So if you say 5,000, that means that the maximum the court could order is 5,000 or anything in between, because they can always stay, which is basically forgiving a certain portion of that forfeiture. So they can impose the 5,000 as required and stay 4,000 if they want, making it a effectively $1,000 payment. Or they can impose the 5,000 and keep it there. If you set it at 1,000, then the court is just limiting its scale. The court could only go up to 1,000. It couldn't go above that because it's not authorized by the legislature. So it's your choice as to where you want to set that maximum. But basically, no matter what you say, all you're doing is setting the maximum. Court can always go less all the way down to 0.
Mr. Chair,
Which in turn, that was the reason I thought 5,000 made most sense, because that
Yes.
gives the court
Okay.
The old
that option.
person,
I'm
stays-
sorry,
I'm
I
sorry,
spoke out
as a
of turn.
father, there's no value that can be enough
That's very
for
true.
abusing a
That's
child.
very true.
And I'm going to go back to what David Case said in his thing, in his message to us. This is abuse against children. There are state laws already on it. If somebody's doing this, it gets reported and it gets taken care of as a child abuse case. In my opinion, that's the way it should be handled.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Alderman.
Cale, as we determined, there is no language within the child abuse laws that include this, correct? So what Alderman Stefanski is saying, is there validity to that? That,
The closest state law that we're talking about from an element-to-element standpoint is Section 948.04, which is causing emotional harm to a child. The standards of that law require someone to be not only in the care, or the child to be in the care or control of the person who commits that offense, but also then requires a substantial showing of harm to the child. So, like I said, there's a factual scenario in which it could be maybe proven by the DA. However, this law does not follow that track and instead removes that second half of the element and actually removes the first half. It doesn't matter if the person is in control or has custody of the child, and it doesn't matter if the child was actually harmed. The ordinance only controls the act of conversion therapy, and that is it. So they go down the same path under certain factual scenarios, but each one requires different elements of proof. The ordinance locally would be an easier case to prove than the criminal emotional abuse to child penalty would be, although they could both apply to the same situation, possibly.
Couldn't this be physical abuse too, though, if they're getting electric shock? That's physical abuse, correct?
Correct. I assume this was more of the quote therapy side of it, where it was just engaging in verbal exchanges. But yes, if there is a physical harm, that would be actually significantly different.
I'm considering this in all scenarios because I know what's happening in the Bible Belt, that there's electrocution that's being done. To me, that's physical abuse. That's physical child abuse.
if that particular factual situation comes up, then you would have criminal charges in that one. We wouldn't charge, the city doesn't adopt physical abuse or mental abuse of a child. We don't adopt Chapter 948 because that's the whole chapter is offenses against children and crimes against children. So the city doesn't adopt those parts because that is generally reserved for the district attorney.
That's why I think this $5,000 is nothing. I think it's useless. So,
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Alderman Road.
I don't know if this is for the chairman or the Kale. What is before us tonight? I mean,
Right?
I got this at 5:30 tonight and said, here it is, and this is the first I saw it.
So right now, what's before the committee is the original ordinance that was presented several meetings ago. But the version you have in front of you is the one that contains Alderman Grisham's proposed amendments to that ordinance.
So this is an amendment.
It is officially a motion to approve the ordinance as it was presented, and on top of that, a motion to amend as presented. So ultimately, what you have in front of you is a motion to approve with a motion to amend. So what is
To this amendment, to this, everything in green here.
correct? Because no one moved to approve the original one. So what Alderwoman Grisham did is she actually just simply presented a new item for approval. So there's one main motion that has been amended from a prior version. You can consider it basically a single motion before the committee for what you have in front of you for your consideration.
so we don't have a motion on the floor right now, technically.
Alderman Grisham made the motion. I have not heard a second yet.
Second.
So at this point, discussion could continue or a vote could take place at the call of the chair.
Yes. So, I mean, I'd like to continue again the fact that, you know, the problem really that I'm facing with, you know, we have state assembly persons, we have senators. I mean, I wonder if any of those people were kind of approached by the people that are really demanding this local ordinance to be approved, you know. And I understand that sometimes in lingering the situation with state rulers, you know, I mean, based their time, they don't want to take action on, you know. But is anyone from the, maybe Alderman Angelito, maybe you can answer that. I mean, you did approach anybody from the state, or has been anybody really consulted in regard to this concern, really? I mean, I have concern too. I'm not, again, I repeat myself, I'm not happy, you know, if people, family have done this. To me, that's totally insane, you know? But,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the state government, this has been something that my elected officials have been talking about, but the state government won't even hold hearings on this issue. So that's why I think it's really important that municipalities and local governments take action, because I believe doing something is better than doing nothing on this issue. Sure, $5,000 might not be enough, but $5,000 is better than doing nothing and having $0 forfeiture on this issue. And with regards to like this issue, of course I want a statewide ban. Of course I don't want this allowed in New Berlin or Brookfield or Wausau or other parts of Wisconsin, but as a body, I represent the city of West Allis, and I want to make sure that conversion therapy has no place in our city, in our community. And I know this is on the table right now, so I'm happy to deliberate, and I'm happy to answer any other questions on this topic, because it is hard to track data on this. Even if it isn't happening in West Allis, this ordinance is designed to prevent it from happening in the future. Like, I think it's really important that as a city, we be forward-thinking and that we take action on issues to protect the most vulnerable in our community.
I always, again, I mean, and I repeat that, I did ask early for someone to give me actually a percentage. If it's 1% that we've been facing West Allis with any of those cases, you know, that's one big problem that I'm facing with. But if we have, say, 0%, and then the incurrence would be the fact that still the licensee physician doing service in West Allis, we can really stop them from doing it because, again, we don't have much control over the state licensing, you know. And that's one of the biggest concern that I have. You know, still the guys will be able to practice in West Allis. Maybe won't be able, probably won't do that anymore. I have no idea. Maybe will continue to do that. So he pays the amount, whatever it is. So to me, whether it's a 1,000 or 10,000, that's wrong, you know. I'm not in favor of that. But the fact it is that the only problem that I have, and people can go from West Allis residents, can go to any parts of the state here and have somebody provide that crazy service, you know, which I would never do to my kid, you know. But that's what my biggest problem really is, you know. To me, again, I say it should be a statewide laws, you know, like already we have laws on the book are abusing, so that's already in place. So,
Mr. Chair.
That's the only thing really I'm kind of concerned about for me to approve this, really. And again, I want to clear to everybody that I'm not happy, you know, if somebody have done that, a parent, to me, a person, the way you're born, that's where your life is gotta be. Because I know many of those people, whether it's women or guys, you know, they're all great people, you know, I know them,
Mr.
you know.
Chair,
Go ahead.
if I may, based on time, I think we've really talked a lot, we've had a lot of talking points here. And I think at this point, if there's not a lot of further discussion on this, I think we should take this to vote.
Well, that's what I was ready to
Chair.
finish, and go ahead.
I make a motion to postpone this indefinitely.
I'll second it.
So, just to clarify, a motion to postpone indefinitely would effectively end the conversation. It would make this no longer an issue for the council. It would essentially render it not for consideration anymore for the rest of the session. Just to clarify what that means. So a motion to postpone indefinitely is a secondary motion that can be made anytime there's a pending motion that essentially ends the discussion of that motion. It's essentially a way of voting no in an affirmative way on a motion, I guess you could say, without actually saying no. It makes sure that whatever was proposed is not going to pass.
So it negates the ordinance altogether?
It would result in the ordinance not passing.
Wow.
So we have a motion on the floor.
Even though there was a motion, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, even though there was a motion to approve and a second already?
Yeah, initially, yeah, so maybe we should vote on that first.
Well, but that's the whole point of it. It's
You already
a,
seconded it.
it's a technical Roberts Rules motion that must be voted on at some point in time prior to moving on. So if that motion passes, everything's done. If that motion fails, it goes back to the main motion, which was made by Alderman Grisham.
Right, so unless you retract your second, we can't
Well,
vote
there-
on
There
the
still has to be a
motion.
vote on this motion to postpone definitely. It has to be an affirmative vote to
Okay.
actually be
Well, I'm not
effective.
retracting my second on the motion of Alderman Stefanowski. So there's a motion on the floor to stop discussions of this ordinance. So in favor to stop this ordinance for further discussions?
Do we do an individual vote on this?
Yes, that's what we're gonna do.
You can call it for individual vote.
Okay, I call for an individual vote.
Yes.
So I vote against, no.
Yes.
Aye.
No.
Aye. So 3-2. So the motion passed for stop or reduce or not talking about it anymore. So it's been, but now it's gotta go in front of the council to vote on it.
Correct. So the motion that will go before the council is essentially the motion to postpone indefinitely.
Yes. So the motion would be for, from the, the council floor for, disapprove the motion of the, ordinance that was, or resolution that was presented to us tonight. So we concede
Postpone it indefinitely.
indefinitely. We just,
So it's a procedural motion that effectively just cuts off the ability to vote on the main
Yes.
motion.
okay, very good. So anything else for discussions? I don't think we have anything else, so.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Advisory Committee come to order. Let it be known that all members are present at this present time. Number 50, the ordinance to create the Board of Absentee Ballot Canvassers and establish rules for counting absentee ballots.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I have a question. This is just for counting absentee ballots as they come in, correct?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So this is a procedure under state law that allows municipalities to create a separate board of absentee ballot canvassers. So we have a municipal board of canvassers who count all the regular votes. Normally, they count all in-person and absentee ballots. If this were to pass, then actually that municipal board would only count in-person votes, and a separate appointed board would count the absentee ballots. The ballots still would remain sealed and could only be counted on election day, but it would be a separate room open for public viewing, in which people would sit around and all they would do is open absentee ballots all day, and the people at the polls would no longer receive absentee ballots anymore, allowing them to focus on in-person voting only.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's fine-tuning the process, basically?
As a poll worker, it would be much more efficient if you could focus just on in-person voters. I know it was distracting at times where folks were lining up and others were trying to open ballots, and then we just switch and get out of our program and our computer. So it does, I think, create efficiencies because you can focus on the same computer screen. Everyone can come in more quickly, and it's the same process. The Board of Absentee Ballot Canvassers can focus on their one process, receiving ballots, verifying that they're in compliance with the law, checking them in to the state, verifying that it's the only ballot that came in. And so I think it's a very efficient way of handling what I expect to be a very high volume of absentee ballots in November.
I would agree. Okay, that's all the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 51, reappointment to the Library Board of Cary Southern.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
I wanted to make mention that I really appreciate that both Carrie and Nicole, who we're going to hear next, are going to have an additional term to their board and committee. It's really important that we have in a community people who stand up and volunteer for such roles. So I'd like to thank them.
Thank you. We're always looking for new volunteers.
Correct.
So- All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 52, reappointment of Nicole
Move to approve.
Lee,
Second.
member of the West Allis Block Grant. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.